Welcome to Functional Philosophy, the show in which I, Charles II, explain and apply Ayn Rand's philosophy, Objectivism. If you'd like to ask me a question on Objectivism or its application, just go to charles2.com/contact. And my last name is spelled T as in tango, E as in echo, and W as in whiskey. I have done a bit of reading on the ARI Atlas Society divide, but I'm not sure why ARI represents objectivism in a pure form, apparently categorically so, but the Atlas Society is, in your words, not even objectivists and beneath contempt. Well, that does sound like me, although I can't remember exactly when I said that, but I do remember saying something like that, and in any case, it's something I would say. Continuing the question, can you please explain what philosophical disqualifies David Kelley and from even being representative of objectivist philosophy? So basically, why is the Atlas Society bad and ARI pure and good? Well, I definitely did not say that they were pure and apparently categorically so, you say, as if I am just emphatic about how great ARI is. Well, all I can say to that is pay attention to what I actually say, or you're under no obligation to, but don't make up things that I say, because I do not say that ARI is pure, and certainly I don't say that they are categorically so. I do say that they stick to the letter of the law, and are in that way much superior to the Atlas Society, who are not objectivists. If you doubt this, I suggest you go look at their Twitter feed. In addition to seeing horribly lame memes, you will also see outright misrepresentations of objectivism. One they posted a while ago, I remember Rucka pointed this out, which is how I saw it, because I don't follow them. I don't know if he does, I don't know how he saw it, but I saw it through him. And they attributed a paraphrase of "the more you learn, the less you know" to Ayn Rand, as if that was something she believed, rather than a cliche falsehood that she had bad characters in Atlas Shrugged say. I think it's in a scene with a bunch of people just saying different trite falsehoods. But they presented this as if she believed it and said it was so true. Now, I can't imagine that you read enough to know about this divide and yet also are incapable of understanding why I would be against the Atlas Society. Go read Peikoff's essay, Fact and Value, if you want the definitive statement on this issue and David Kelley. The Atlas Society are skeptics pretending to be objectivists. Their view is that some parts of objectivism may be wrong, and so we have to say that objectivism is an open system. It's not all interrelated, it doesn't all stand or fall as one, because if you're a skeptic and you think some parts of objectivism are probably false statistically, which is how skeptics think, then in order to save the whole, you have to violate it by saying, well, it isn't really a system. It isn't really all interrelated. We can get rid of some parts of it and keep the rest. This is just George Bush's violated the free market in order to save it idea. This is just, we are going to treat this as something other than integrated because we're skeptics. So here's an integration you may not have thought of before: the connection between skepticism and disintegration. Skepticism motivates disintegration. If you think you might always be wrong about something, then you're not going to put things together. You're not going to interconnect things, because then if one thing falls, the rest falls over. So you disintegrate habitually to save yourself from the constant overturning that's taking place, or that you expect to take place, as a skeptic. And this is exactly what the Atlas Society does. No, objectivism isn't a system, it's just a collection of different ideas, and it's really whatever we want to believe it is. It's really a synonym for truth. So if Ayn Rand was wrong about free will, then we can throw out free will and keep the rest. Now, that is not necessarily a dishonest position. You could believe that some part of Ayn Rand's philosophy is wrong, but to believe that and then to promote yourself as an objectivist, as an advocate of her philosophy, is dishonest and immoral. Because one position of her philosophy, you could call it a meta position, is that the philosophy is a whole. It all goes together. It all stands or falls as one. Now, you can disagree with that. That doesn't mean you're dishonest, just means you're not an objectivist. There's nothing inherently immoral about that, although I do believe you are wrong philosophically if that's your belief. But the Atlas Society is more than mistaken. They are immoral and dishonest. And you can see the consequences, the cash value of their ideas. They promote nihilistic libertarians. They associated with Nathaniel Branden. I think they still have a quote up by him on their main page. It is clear that these people's desire is to smear objectivism by claiming to be part of it and then being as awful as possible. Now, that may be hard for you to relate to. It certainly is to me, but there is no other explanation for what they're doing. They are subjectivists and skeptics pretending to be objectivism, going out and spouting subjectivism and skepticism in the name of objectivism in order to smear objectivism. That's what they are, and that's what they're doing. And that's why they're evil and not objectivists. I would like you to appraise one of Ayn Rand's specific views, so it's not strictly philosophical and is a concrete statement of hers I want you to appraise. It's to do with her answer in reply to a question about the TV miniseries Roots. She says something about black people needing their own myths, like Greek myths for Western men. I don't get her position here. This answer can be found in Ayn Rand Answers, pages 208 to 210. I would like to stress that I'm interested in your appraisal of this view as the concrete that it is, and it's not a wider question of Ayn Rand as a philosopher. It's more a question of why black people would need black men in particular to look up to, why they would need myths about their own people, quote-unquote. The best thing I can think of is that since art is a concretization, it might be worthwhile for blacks whose ancestors have been enslaved and degraded to get a concretization of the alternative that's close to home. Of course, they can always abstract away their particular history, but a concretization might still be a plus. Okay, well, race per se has nothing to do with it. After all, most Westerners are not Greek, so this doesn't have anything to do with race per se. What it does have to do with is your culture. The reason this applies to black people in America in a way it wouldn't apply in other situations is that black people were kept in their culture by the rest of society. They're not like the other races who, whatever their problems, were allowed in more easily and quickly than blacks. Blacks were excluded by the mainstream of American culture. It was only the 60s that we had laws mandating the second-class treatment of blacks. That is to say nothing of slavery, of course. So the point here is not they're black, so they need black people. They were not allowed into Western culture. If those barriers didn't exist, yes, then of course, like every other race, they could come in and adopt Greek myths for themselves as they started to think of themselves as Western, as they assimilate into the culture. And I think that's more possible today for blacks to do than it was in the past. But in the past, even by the time Ayn Rand was writing and speaking, these kind of laws had only just been invalidated. So she was speaking at a time when blacks were forcibly prevented from assimilating into Western culture and adopting their myths, so they need their own thing. That's the context for it. They're not allowed to be in our culture by force. So it's good for them to develop their own myths, their own idea about what their culture is. And that's what she thought Roots did. Should waiting for sex until marriage be encouraged, seeing as statistically it leads to better and longer-lasting marriages, thus more psychologically stable offspring, etc.? Or is this another instance of religion killing human joy? Well, it is definitely another instance of religion killing human joy, and you have 3 invalid premises in your question. First, altruism. Thus, more psychologically stable offspring? You do not get married out of duty to propagate the human race. That is not where this cashes out. It cashes out in terms of your happiness at being married to this person. You do not get married for kids. Now notice he says this is not just another benefit. He says, seeing as statistically it leads to better and longer lasting marriages, thus more psychologically stable offspring. As if that is the ultimate end cash value. We're just passing on to the next generation in an endless altruistic cycle. No. So that's number 1, altruism. 2, statistics. No, you do not advise people or take action based on statistics, not primarily. And even when you do it because you first-handedly observe that your situation is similar to the statistical situation. The example I always use is, people always say, oh, planes are statistically safe. Yeah, but if you see that the pilot's drunk and the wing's falling off and the plane is smoking, you don't say, well, that's statistics, planes are safe, so I'm going to get on. That's ridiculous. Same thing here. This is something the MGTOW people bring up all the time. Well, what about the statistics of divorce? You might think that you have a woman that's good, but the statistics say otherwise. Wrong. These statistics are the statistics. If you meet the woman of your dreams and you have every reason to trust her, and then you say, yeah, but I'm not going to get married and get into a serious long-term relationship with you because the statistics say otherwise, that is the height of evil. If I were that woman, I would want nothing to do with you. That is truly a despicable act of the most extreme self-abnegation. I am going to go with the collective experiences of other people rather than my own judgment about what's going on in my life. Statistics are just statistics. They are just correlations. And as such, they are inferior to causal knowledge. So it doesn't matter if every other person on Earth has a specific correlation that you know is true. This has actually been the correlation for them. If you have a reason to believe causally that your experience will be different, you go based on your knowledge of your causal situation. You don't say, well, most marriages end in divorce. Everybody else's marriage ends in divorce. Those are the statistics. But if you have reason to believe that your relationship to your significant other will cause a long-lasting marriage, you go based on that causal knowledge, not correlation. And numbers do not overwhelm causal knowledge. You do not go with correlation over causation, no matter how high the correlation is. And the last mistake here is intrinsicism, or you could say a dropping of context. It is the idea that longer-lasting marriages are inherently valuable. Why? Why is a longer-lasting marriage the standard? Is it better to have a longer-lasting marriage if you're miserable when you would be happier getting divorced? Why is duration of marriage an intrinsic value? It isn't. It's contextual. Longer-lasting marriages are good if all of these other factors are satisfied, such as both people are happy in the marriage. If both people are miserable in the marriage, it's a bad thing for the marriage to be longer-lasting. Now, this does not surprise me at all. I believe this statistic. Of course, people who wait until marriage to have sex have longer-lasting marriages because they act out of duty. Why do you wait until marriage to have sex? Because if you have sex before you get married, the idea is, I'm testing this out to see if it works for me. I'm being selfish. This has to meet my standards. I'm not going to get married if this doesn't meet my needs. Waiting for marriage to have sex is a policy based on duty. It is, I am going to get married, and then no matter what the sex is like, I am already committed. So of course, people who get married out of duty, of course, are going to stay married out of duty. This is not a surprise at all. If you'd like to keep up with everything I do, just go to charles2.com. If you'd like to enable me to do more, just go to patreon.com/charles2 and become a supporter. Thanks for listening.